Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, say what you will about Mike Pence, and we have here on this program. His politics and his pandering are terrible. He went along with all of the awful policy of the Trump administration, told most of the same lies. And even during COVID, Pence could always be seen gazing in admiration of the boss man. But the one good thing that he did in public life was refusing to sign on to Trump's attempted coup. And today we learned he is not on board with coup part 2 either.
Will you be endorsing your former president? You were on the ticket with him last time around.
Well, Martha, I appreciate the question. And it should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
I mean, it comes as something of a surprise, to be honest. All it takes to break the cycle of servility is surviving a violent Trump mob that had a noose and gallows literally yelling they wanted to hang you. But despite the risk to life and limb and to American democracy, there are still lots of people ready to throw their neck in the ring, falling all over themselves to join Donald Trump's ticket.
Various names came up. One of them was, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah. He's made a big splash. Ron DeSantis, who's making an appearance today in South Carolina, we just found out. Obviously, Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, and a big presence here for Tulsi Gabbard. Very interesting. And Kristi Noem as well, I should say. Right. Are they all on your short list?
Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's not going to be Ron DeSantis. But lots of those names and others are circulating. Lots of them know that Donald Trump does nothing but watch TV all day. So you're getting a very perverse competition taking place right now on right-wing airwaves and social media. Although you can apparently take it too far. One contender until last week was Alabama Senator Katie Britt, but her bizarre, widely panned, and completely debunked State of the Union response seemed to have earned her more points with comedy writers than with voters or with the Trump team. So let's focus here on those that have bent over backwards to kiss the MAGA ring. So you have to begin with South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, mentioned there by Laura Ingraham, who's been at this for a while. It started last April when Scott was testing the waters for a presidential run.
I'm announcing today that I'm running for president of the United States of America. Hello, North Charleston. But when I go back to Iowa, it will not be as a presidential candidate. I am suspending my campaign.
Didn't last that long. Since leaving the race in November, Scott has had a very busy couple of months, finding what he says was the love of his life at church and proposing to her on the beach with a photographer in tow, something even Trump remarked on as only Trump can.
Today was a big story, the biggest story out there. He's engaged to be married. We never thought this was going to happen. What's going on?
We never thought this was going to happen. What's going on? If you win the Trump sweepstakes competition by debasing yourself the most intensely, well, then Tim Scott has the inside track. Here was his audition tape just last night on Fox.
If there's anyone paying attention to the details of 2024, it's Donald Trump. He understands that the devil's in the details, so he puts his brilliant daughter-in-law in charge of our RNC apparatus so that all that Reince talked about, wise man he is, will be taken care of. At the end of the day, you want the ball in the hands of the best player on the field. That player is Donald Trump.
I love everything about that. The idea that he's just like details obsessed. You know, you need a guy who's details obsessed. It's not just Scott, though. There are other senators in contention, too, like J.D. Vance of Ohio, who was pretty unequivocal in calling himself a never-Trumper for a long time. Now Vance is campaigning for Trump, says the former president has changed his mind, so much so that Vance would never have pulled a Mike Pence as VP.
Would you have certified the election results had you been vice president?
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there.
Fought over it. Fought over it. That's a great idea. Can't you imagine how great that would have been if they fought over it from there? Of course, despite that, neither Vance nor Trump or Scott may be Trump's pick. The conventional wisdom right now suggests that Trump might be looking to court women voters by putting one on his ticket. Trump says he likes the concept Which brings us to South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. She had her eyes on the prize from the very beginning, so much so she did not even try to run for president. Her endorsement of Trump last September set off a flurry of running mate speculation. And in fact, you remember that she ran ads during the presidential debates for herself.
South Dakota stayed open for business during the pandemic. Now we've got more jobs than people. So I'm filling in until you get here. South Dakota's the freest state in America.
South Dakota, freedom works here.
Now, that aired in a year in which Noem was not standing for any election, during a Republican debate that she was not participating in, but that Donald Trump might have been watching. I mean, he certainly isn't moving to South Dakota, but he is looking for vice president. Noem has been very obviously auditioning for this role, but in a strange turn, it appears that Noem is endorsing a Texas dentist on social media, doing ads like this.
Well, hi, I'm Kristi Noem. I'm the governor of South Dakota and had the opportunity to come to Smile, Texas to fix my teeth. I think that I chose the team here at Smile, Texas because they're the best. I love that my bite is better.
Great. Good for you. Noem is now being sued by a consumer group for not disclosing a financial relationship with that dentistry company. Fresh off that, it appears that Noem posted this ad for custom insoles for your shoes.
We are at Fit My Feet in Rapid City, and these guys are amazing. They have totally built me inserts for running, separate ones for my cowboy boots. I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to be like Bionic Woman now.
I mean, I like insoles as much as the next guy, but I will say at least that company is in her state, so it makes a little more sense. Not exactly vice presidential, unless you're an ex-president who's constantly grifting the public, trading on your notoriety in a ceaseless sales pitch, constantly trying to get people to yes. Donald Trump has got a lot of yes men and women vying for his attention. But as we learned with Mike Pence, it really matters who he picks. It matters who the vice president could be, especially if the president is going to demand you help end democracy. A lot of big news today on two of Donald Trump's upcoming trials. In New York, the judge in Trump's hush money election interference trial adjourned the case for at least 30 days following an influx of new discovery material. In Fulton County, Georgia, one of the prosecutors making the case against the ex-president stepped down. That would be Nathan Wade, who resigned as a condition of the case going forward. This follows a failed attempt to have the case effectively dismissed after it was revealed that Wade had a romantic relationship with the district attorney leading the case, Fani Willis. So today, the judge came out with his ruling. He did not destroy the case. He didn't nuke it. He didn't order Willis off the case, which was a possibility which would have ended the prosecution. Instead, the judge said the case could proceed, but ruled that either Wade or Willis would have to step aside. Willis is staying on the case. Even as this hurdle is cleared, there are a number of open questions about the timing of this case going forward and the potential for further appeals. Catherine Christian is a former prosecutor who served in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Charles Coleman served as a prosecutor in New York and now practices as a civil rights and criminal defense attorney, and they join me now. Great to have you here. Let me start with you, Catherine, on the judge's order out of Fulton County today. Judge McAfee, they had the sort of trial within a trial to see if the defense attorneys could meet a burden to show a conflict of interest between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade that would impinge or disqualify her from the case. What did you think of his ruling?
And I think that his decision was right on target. The standard should have been an actual conflict of interest. If you recall, during the hearing, the defense attorney says, no, it's an appearance of impropriety. And I've always said if that was the standard, there'd be a lot of elected DAs throughout this country disqualified. Now, he did find that there was a significant appearance of impropriety, and there was. And it's a very stinging decision.
Yes,
yes. He said she testified in an unprofessional manner, that the lapse of judgment. So she won because she's not disqualified, but it was very critical of her. And, of course, Mr. Wade had to leave, which he should have a long time ago, quite frankly. And as soon as they started a romantic relationship, as soon as the motion was filed. But she gets to keep the case.
Yeah, I mean, one more follow-up to you is about pre-trial appeals of this decision. Again, I know we go so in the weeds of this stuff, but because the pacing is so important, typically something like this might be brought up post-conviction appeals. Do they have any avenue to further delay now?
They may be able to take what's called an interlocutory appeal, meaning you don't wait till after the verdict. This case is not getting tried before the election. Even without this was not going to be tried before the election. But with the appeal, it's going to be next year if out.
And I would add to that, Chris, that we don't know whether there have been referrals made to the Georgia State Bar around ethics or those considerations, because when you're talking about the legal professional ramifications of something like this, the standard around the appearance of impropriety becomes much more relevant than in this context.
Whether you're tossed off for conflict of interest.
Correct. And so I fully expect that they will try to go after her and him, if for that matter, in a different venue, which would be more appropriate than where they did here.
This is the finding here. The judge found there was no actual conflict brought about by the relationship. Without sufficient evidence, the district attorney acquired a personal stake in the prosecution, that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, which is what she was arguing. The defendant's claim of an actual conflict must be denied. That was the finding there. Let's move to this Alvin Bragg craziness. You were in that office, right? So it appears like they got a huge dump of discovery from the U.S. Southern District of New York Federal Prosecutor's Office that has now delayed them. What are the ramifications of this delay?
Well, it's a big ramification. First of all, it's shocking that the United States Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York, knowing how big a case this is in terms of high profile, knowing that the trial was on March 25th, would do this 30,000-page document dump this week, 15,000 more documents today. It's not surprising that the Southern District of New York and the Manhattan DA's office do not have a warm and fuzzy relationship. That was my experience years there. I think Alvin Bragg believed because he was a line assistant there years ago, they would treat him differently. Robert Morgenthau was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and they didn't treat him differently. So the problem is that the prosecutor in New York have very stringent discovery requirements. They essentially have to give over everything in their file, with some exceptions. They also have to show that they were diligent and made a good faith effort to get items from an office that's not in their possession control, the Southern District. Right. Did they do that? When they say, the prosecutors say that we asked for it and the Southern District declined, did they just say, okay, or did they take it further? Right. And that's what the hearing is going to be about, the circumstances about the document dump.
So there's still an outstanding question, right, about when and if this trial goes to
right. What we're looking at is what would have been the trial date is now going to be discussed around future planning and scheduling around the future of this case. And so just to put this in perspective, OFD, which is open file discovery, which Catherine was just talking about, is something that as prosecutors, particularly in New York City and New York State, you have to deal with. You know that this is not a jurisdiction where you're fighting back and forth about what has to be turned over. It's pretty much an agreement between prosecutors and the defense bar. Turn it all over. Right. And so Catherine is absolutely right. The fact that the U.S. Attorney's Office waited until this point to deliver such a massive document dump leaves the judge in this case basically with their hands tied to say, look, it's very, very difficult for me to deny a motion for additional time to go over such voluminous amounts of discovery. It's reasonable. And so this is another example of Donald Trump getting assistance from outside of his own legal team around moving these delays further and further.
It's really been remarkable to watch when you've taken the American justice system, which operates often in the background of people's imagination, or people who are touched by the system. And there's a lot of them out there because we have the largest, mass incarceration in the developed world. So people know it. They're up against it. But the version they're next to or adjacent to often doesn't look like this. It does go very slowly, but a lot of times it goes slowly while you're sitting in Rikers waiting for your court date, and then you plea. And so the system that we've seen here is like this test. Like, can the system actually subject the most powerful private citizen, one of them in the entire country, to like the normal rule of law? And it seems to be straining at every single turn to do just that.
A lot of times we talk about a two-tiered system of justice in America, and we racialize it from the standpoint of disparate sentencing and mass incarceration, and those things are absolutely very relevant factors. But what we are seeing here in the case of Donald Trump is the notion of how power and privilege influence who has access to real justice and the system and who does not.
So it'd all look very different if he were sitting in a jail right now, where the time delay question would be very different. I'm not saying he should be, but I'm saying that's how it looks for a whole lot of people that are run through this system and end up in very, very different circumstances. Charles Coleman, Catherine Christian, thank you.